I remember one time in my old career, and by old, I mean back when I was a financial planner, they brought in this outside manager, and I absolutely hated this guy. I was a second-year financial planner. His name was Chris, and I thought he was a little weird. It was a job that I thought other friends of mine should have gotten, if not me. And what's funny about that is that 25 years later, I now know that Chris was so good at his job. He was so transformative that I know that he was always the right choice. It just wasn't what I wanted at the time. And it's funny. I got to know Chris. I got to like Chris. Chris ended up being a mentor, not just for me, but for a lot of our friends. Chris climbed Mount Everest twice. We have Chris on an early episode of Before the Stacking Benjamin Show. We had a show called Two Guys and Your Money. It's so funny. It's been so long since I've done that. We're doing this show live, and I totally forgot what the name of our old show was. But anyway, that's why sometimes it's more comfortable to just use what you already know. Like you think you've got all the information. It just feels very comfortable to use the information you had. I don't want Chris. I wanted somebody else. Most of the time, though, the better choice is to dedicate a part of your process to digging up new information, to add to the pile of info to make a better decision. And you know what? You'll make better decisions, but not, maybe not, for the reasons you think you might. Live from the apartment, the 3-room apartment above Uncle Jack's garage while the basement's getting renovated. Hey there, stackers. I'm Joe Saul-Sehy, Hi, Average Joe Money on Twitter, and also co-host of another show called Stacking Benjamins. This show's called Money in the Morning, where we take 2 headlines ripped from the press, and you know what? We tell you what they might have to do with your money. And today, it's going to be a little different than before. We've had some crazy headlines lately. We're going to get even a little crazier on today's show. Today's episode of Money in the Morning is brought to you by our friends over at Tiller. I love it. I just got a thank you note, like a love letter from a friend telling me how happy he was that I recommended Tiller. He's a nerd with a spreadsheet, the opposite of me. But for him and I, Tiller's perfect because it's highly customizable, but still super easy to use. How does it work? We'll get into that later in the show. But for now, if you want to check it out, head to stackingbenjamins.com/Tiller. And not only will you help yourself, you also help the show. So thanks to everybody who's used our link when they've gone to Tiller. I think you're going to love it. All right. Something else you're going to love are our 2 headlines today. So Laura, why don't you kick this baby off for us?
Who needs coffee when you have Money in the Morning headlines?
Who needs coffee? I need coffee. That's who needs coffee, Laura. Come on, let's be realistic. I mean, yes, you have headlines and they're very exciting, but I also think that coffee kind of makes the world go round, at least my world. The first headline today comes to us from CNET. This is written by Bonnie Burton. MIT scientist, big breakthrough. Say that 3 times fast. MIT scientists solve a pasta puzzle, how to break spaghetti in 2. Did you see this one? Mathematicians figure out exactly how to evenly snap dry spaghetti noodles. Anyone who's cooked pasta knows it's nearly impossible to break dry spaghetti noodles into 2 neat pieces. Usually as the noodles bend, they split into a few large pieces and then splinter into tiny ones that fall onto the kitchen floor and roll under the stove. Those unusual shattering patterns of dried spaghetti sticks have stumped scientists for years. But now MIT mathematicians have put their heads together to solve the pasta mystery and show how breaking the dry noodles in 2 and not 24 pieces can be accomplished. Their new study, published last Monday in the open access journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, shows that researchers have discovered the best way of breaking pasta into 2 even pieces. The paper's authors include 2 MIT University students, Ronald Hessier and Vishal Patil. MIT mathematics professor Norbert Stoop and Emmanuel Villermau of Université et Marseille in France. Quote, understanding and controlling fracture dynamics remain one of the foremost theoretical and practical challenges in material science and physics, the study says. Fracture behavior of elongated, brittle objects such as fibers, or in this case, pasta, has previously been studied in the 1950s by Nobel Prize winner Richard Feynman. He documented that dry spaghetti almost always breaks into more than two pieces when bent. Then in 2005, French physicists Basile Adoli and Sébastien Newkirch of the Université Pierre et Marie Curie, I'm slaughtering this French, studied Feynman's work. The scientists discovered through their experiments that when a stick is bent evenly from both ends, it will break near the center curve, creating a snapback reaction or vibration that further breaks the stick into multiple pieces until the vibration subsides. Their study won them the 2006 IG Nobel Award for Physics. But this current study, the MIT scientists decided to build a machine specifically used to controllably twist and bend hundreds of two types of spaghetti sticks. Of course, we're going to use Barilla number 5 and Barilla number 7. That's what I eat too. Both have slightly different diameters. Each end of the machine had a clamp that held a stick of spaghetti in place. One clamp would rotate and twist the dry noodle by various degrees, while the other clamp slid toward the twisting clamp so that the spaghetti would bend. The researchers discovered through their experiments that if the spaghetti's twisted at 270 degrees and then carefully and slowly bent at the speed of 0.11 inches, 3 millimeters per second, it would indeed snap perfectly into two equal pieces. It's so amazing. While this may seem like the kind of study only foodies and chefs would care about, the mathematicians believe their data could help scientists figure out how to control fractures in other spaghetti-shaped materials, such as engineered nanotubes or microtubules in cells, according to a report from MIT News. Amazing piece. I've always wondered that. How to break spaghetti in half. Gary in the comments, we do these live in front of a Facebook audience, which is why I can slaughter French names and not go back and fix it in post like we do on the Stecky Benjamin show. Gary says, I wonder how much they spent on that research. Kimberly said they make 5-inch long pasta now, so you don't have to break it in half. Problem solved. Ray says, wait, is this the Science Versus podcast? Oh no, this is a finance podcast, Ray. But wait, there's more. What the heck does this have to do with your money, Joe? Where are you leading us with this crazy spaghetti study? I saw this piece this morning. I couldn't put it down. I could not stop reading about spaghetti. And yet, as evidenced by all my friends here with us live on Facebook, seems like a gigantic waste of time. I get to the end, I'm like, really? I can split spaghetti evenly. And Kimberly says I could just buy it already split, pre-split. Probably going to upcharge me for that splitting, Kimberly. But Dylan says, if you need help finding content, let us know. Wait, Dylan, there's a specific reason. Tons of financial news out there. Joe chose this one. And even though Mom says sometimes I'm off the deep end, and maybe I am on this, I don't think so, because I couldn't put it down. And even though it has to do with just a little piece of spaghetti, the fact that MIT scientists spent so much time on this and figured out exactly the way to do it, to me, is just phenomenal. And I think, but it's damn spaghetti. Who the hell cares? But if you go down to the bottom of the piece and you read all the way to the bottom, what do you find out? This ain't about spaghetti at all, kids. This is data that can help scientists figure out how to control fractures in engineered nanotubes and microtubules in cells. This is actually not small stuff for the scientific community. It is incredibly interesting to me that these guys would spend forever on something so small. So what's the point? What does this have to do with my money? Let me tell you what the point is here. And that is, a lot of the time when you follow financial stuff, like you ever dig into some of these things and people will tell you, they're like, that's a huge waste of time. You hire somebody to do that. Like if I'm going to buy exchange traded funds, why the hell do I want to know how a stock works? Why do I want to dig into a financial sheet? Why do I want to dig into a balance sheet, financial statement? Why do I want to read what the CEO has to say? Why do I want to follow the market in general? You know why? Because if you find it as interesting as I found this dumbass spaghetti study, the breadcrumbs lead you to other stuff. And what's cool is I didn't even know what a microtubule was. I still don't know. I'm kind of interested now. I'm interested in seeing where this thing leads. And we try to tell our friends, if you're a money geek like I am, that this stuff can be fun. It can be interesting. They're like, no, it isn't. No. Or they tell you that they think maybe one piece of it's fun or one piece is interesting. They'll ask a question. Would drive me crazy in meetings. And by the way, guys, this would happen so often. It was just ugly. I would have spouses sitting across from me or at the table with me. Usually it wasn't across from me. I try to use a round table, but we would have a husband and wife. And in so many cases, one of the spouses, the one that's not interested in money, would ask a question, and the other spouse, and I'm sorry, I'm going to tell you what it usually was. It was usually the woman at the table would ask a question. The man would roll his eyes like, oh, that's the dumbest question ever. And it never was. And it was the thing that was going to make that person interested. And before he'd start mansplaining it all to her, I would jump in and I would have to say immediately what a great question it was for two reasons. It's a great question. Number one, because it's the stuff that hardly anybody knows and everybody wants to pretend they know. But then number two, and I've got three fingers out. I have no idea why. Number two is that if it's what interests you, this is the starting point, right? This leads you to other stuff. Like I didn't wake up one day and say, you know what? I love reading financial statements. I love digging into what happens with individual companies. I didn't start there. I started with a few stocks that I thought were pretty cool because Peter Lynch said to track what you know, find out more about companies you like. And that's not the end point. You don't go buy it, but that's the beginning point. And that led me into why is debt so bad when it comes to a company? Why do acquisition costs matter? What the hell's a PE ratio? And then all this stuff kind of came from there. So spaghetti. Yeah. Okay. It's spaghetti, but it leads to microtubules, whatever the hell. I don't even know what those are. Whatever your breadcrumb is, that leads to the next thing. And I think in finance, follow what you like is our big takeaway number one. Love that piece. Let's say hello to everybody who's hanging out with us on Facebook. I know they think I've gone off the deep end now. We've got Alexander here from Germany. We've got Gary here from Hawaii. That's awesome. Ray is here. Asked earlier about where Doug is. Doug's out doing the grocery shopping. Also probably trying to stay away from Gertrude, who is our new social media person. Hello, Gertrude. If Gertrude's out there with us behind the scenes. Susan's here today. Karen's here. And Julianne says kitchen scissors works a treat with spaghetti. And Susan says, do you have to snap each one individually? They used a machine where they put them all in and bent them all of the spaghetti at one time in their case. Gerardo says, I took fracture mechanics in school too. Did you know that metal fractures propagate at the speed of sound for that material when it fails catastrophically? Not until I read this, because the interesting thing is the reason you get more snaps is because of the snap back creates a reverberation that actually breaks the brittle spaghetti into more. Fascinating. I think Gerardo, this stuff is so, it's over my head, but I think it's amazing that people follow it. I had some clients when I was a financial planner, by the way, that were sound engineers. And their job with the auto manufacturers was to make the door, when it closed, sound like it was closing confidently. And that has a lot to do with sound waves, which I think is probably not, I mean, it's not fracture mechanics, but I think that some of the same mathematics about how sound waves reverberate. would have to be the same. They would work with golf club companies to make it so that when you hit the ball correctly, you could hear it. And so it would give golfers an audio cue. It's just amazing, amazing stuff. Kimberly says they don't charge extra and it takes up less space in the cupboard. And Kimberly works at tell me you don't work at a pasta plant. I never know when Kimberly's kidding, but Kimberly says it'd be great if Kimberly did work at a pasta plant. Dylan says, is this really a study in how Doug should keep his life from shattering in a million pieces? There are metaphors. I went with a different one, but that one still works, Dylan. Ray asked me if I took my medication today. Dylan, totally tubular. We're on fire. I think we're going to stop right there for now. But let's move on to our second piece. Our second piece comes to us from Napa-Net, National Association of Plan Advisors. We get a lot of stuff from these guys. It's a great site for nerds like me that like following the retirement plan industry, where a lot of us save a lot of money. You know, if you're saving, you're probably saving through work, right? This is the association for the people that help people manage that money. The headline here, written by Ted Godbout, says most participants would rather leave retirement investing to professionals. A majority of defined contribution plan participants want the help of an expert managing retirement assets, but many will stop short of wanting employers to choose their investments for them, new survey results show. Let's back up for a second. Talk about terms I had problems with, following the breadcrumbs. Defined contribution plan. What the heck does that mean? It's actually pretty easy if you break those two words down. One of two things are going to be defined. Either the contribution is going to be defined or the benefit's going to be defined. In other words, you know what you put in or you know what you get, right? You know what you contribute or you know what you're going to receive. So a defined contribution is, I don't know what I'm going to receive. I'm putting money in. It depends on how I invest it. I have these different investment choices. So defined contribution plan says you can put in X amount of money and then it's up to you. That'll be a 401k, 403b. If you're in Canada, it's the RRSP, plans like that. On the other side is a defined benefit plan. You may not put in anything yourself. Your employer does often defined benefit, but you get something for it. A defined benefit plan then is a pension plan. So if you think about defined benefit as knowing your outcome, defined contribution plan, knowing what we put in, that's where you get it. So majority of defined contribution plan participants, we'll call it 401k participants for most of us, want the help of an expert managing their retirement, but many will stop short of wanting employers to choose their investments for them. New survey results show. According to JP Morgan's 2018 defined contribution plan participant survey, more than half of respondents believe they'll be able to retire when they want, up from 30% in 2012, but fewer than 40% of participants are highly confident in their ability to make key investment decisions, and many are not fully engaged in monitoring their 401k accounts. In addition, many participants do have a realistic sense of how they should be saving, but they don't necessarily save accordingly. Nearly 3/4, 73% of respondents think they should be contributing 10% or more to their plan to be on track for a financially secure retirement, in line with the recommendations of many industry experts. But among those, 70% missed their savings target last year. And the 2016 survey results show a similar shortfall. As to differences in how participants approach investing, 60% of so-called do-it-for-me investors want help selecting their investment strategy and prefer to leave most of the ongoing investment decisions to experienced investment professionals. By contrast, 40% of so-called do-it-yourself investors prefer a more hands-on approach in selecting and monitoring their plans, investment options, and making adjustments. There's more here, and I'll have this in my Twitter feed as soon as we finish recording this piece. This is interesting to me because more 401k participants wanting help with their money. And actually, the way I think people should want help, because do I believe that having a third party help you will be good? Absolutely. I think more information is good, as we talked about in the intro to today's show. I think that using an outside advisor can help. But what I think people think they want, and here's the reason why I think this. I also see when I'm in online forums, I see this is the thing that everybody rallies against online. Don't have an advisor because you can do this stuff yourself, right? You can invest the money yourself. You can move the money to sexy company A, B, or C, and there it is. Having your advisor should have nothing to do with any of that. If you're really going to have a professional help you, here's what you do. The professional's job is not to be some type of Nostradamus. And if you think that that's what the professional does, and that's why you rally against it, you've either hired the wrong professionals or you're rallying against the wrong thing. Because what the professional really does is looks from a third party perspective at your life holistically and says, based on this set of things, this is how you can put more money in. I mean, I just read the message is getting through. People know they need to put 10% or more into their 401k, but 70% of people still aren't doing it. So it has nothing to do with getting the message through. But the big question is, how do I continue saving 10%? And for an outsider to help you with that, often it's easier. I work out better with a coach. At the very least, I work out better with a pack of people. If there's a pack of people doing something and I'm doing it too, I do better. A coach, by the way, though, for me has done even better than that. If I've got somebody coaching me and really covering my blind spot, helps me a ton. So if you're somebody who's hoping that you're a professional, you're not happy with your professional because they don't know where the stock market's going, and you seem to be able to do as well as they do in that department. Yeah. Yes. They're never going to give you what you hope for. But on the other side, if you hope your professional is somebody that can look at your life from the outside in and say, you know what? I think you're messing this up. And I think you should use X fund, Y fund, Z fund, because these fit your long-term goals. Excellent help on that end. And that's our big takeaway, is that maybe having your advisor dovetail, not throw darts, is the answer. Those are our two headlines for today. In just a second, we're going to take those headlines and we're going to bind them together into what we call the big idea. That's the very exciting part. As if talking spaghetti wasn't exciting enough, it gets better. I know. It's amazing. Before we do that, I want to talk about Tiller. But before we talk about Tiller, I actually want to go back and say hi again to our friends who are here live with us on Facebook. Alexander says he works at Audi and we have people checking the smell of every part of the interior of a car, so it's fine-tuned. Isn't it amazing? People judge the sound. People judge the smell. It's incredible to me, Alexander, all the things that go into these products. It's not what you think it is. And it's amazing that somebody gets paid a bunch of money to make it smell right. And you know, that new car smell is fantastic. If I could have my smell of my car stay new car smell instead of Doug smell after he rides with me, that'd be fantastic. Kimberly says she actually does work at a pasta plant. That is so good. That's fantastic. I know more about the FDA food labeling laws for pasta than you will ever want to know. We got to have Kimberly on. Kimberly has to do, you know, there's a friend of ours who has a podcast. You guys might know this podcast that helps you get to sleep. Kimberly could probably do that with the FDA label podcast. That'd be a good podcast. FDA label podcast to put you to sleep. Dylan says he'd invest all his money in pasta. And Susan says that's the big idea. We're going home. Dylan's got the big idea. Invest everything in pasta and we're good. We're going to do a slightly different big idea in a second, Dylan. But before we get to that, let's talk about Tiller, because I mentioned earlier that a listener to the show gave us a nice thank you about recommending Tiller. I believe his name was James. I should have looked it up beforehand, but we're live and I can't go do that right now. I'll have it next time. But I believe it was James said a big thank you for recommending Tiller to him and to everyone. And it worked out really well for him. He said, because he's a spreadsheet nerd and because it gives him the flexibility that he looks for. The reason why Tiller gives you flexibility that I promised I'd talk about later is because it's based on spreadsheets. So you have a Google Doc or you have an Excel doc, you get to choose, and you can lay a template over it or you can create your own. That's not the cool thing. Like, Joe, I can create that document myself if I can do all that. But wait, there's more. When it comes to Tiller, you also press the easy button when it comes to getting all of your data in there. So whether you want it once a day, once a week, once a month, you press a little button and securely and safely all of your expenses and income from your bank account comes in, and also all of your investments come right to Tiller. How cool is that? For me, though, I hear the word spreadsheet, I freak out. I don't want anything to do with it. But there are templates that make it easy. And for me, because it's a spreadsheet, I can put lines together and make the budget more simple. I move fast. I want to make sure that my budget moves fast with me. StackyBenjamins.com/Tiller. By the way, if you use our link for Tiller, the way that we keep the show going at Money in the Morning is if you use it, use our link, that's when they pay us. So thank you for Tiller for being an affiliate program of ours. And thanks to you if you decide to use Tiller for using our link. All right, let's do the big idea. We started off talking about pasta. Dylan says I need to have another big idea because he doesn't want to steal my job. Dylan, I can't imagine. I can imagine, actually, which is why I keep the podcast going. But I know that Dylan's in the wings. If something happens to me, ladies and gentlemen, Dylan's going to be there for you. I love Dylan. I'm happy we finally got to meet, by the way, in Philadelphia, Dylan. That was fun. And I still feel bad that we weren't able to spend more time together. What's that about? Headline number one, we talked about pasta and how pasta always breaks into a bunch of pieces. And unless you do it Kimberly's way, where she works in the plant and they have it cut in half, there is a way now. MIT's found a way to break it. And I found that piece incredibly interesting. And that's also the key with finance. Start with the stuff that impresses you, that for some reason you can't get enough of. Like I can't get enough of breaking pasta into only two pieces. I read that article and was fascinated. Find the stuff that fascinates you. And if your friend says something about money and you say, that's dumb, you just chase somebody away. Maybe it's a loved one. Just chased a loved one away from something that you might want them to pay more attention to. So follow the breadcrumbs from the stuff. Dig in on what you find fascinating. And then the second piece was about financial advisors and your 401k. Turns out that a lot of people want financial advisors to help them with their 401k. The bad news, I said, is that people often want a Nostradamus that can tell them which funds are best. I don't think that's the value add of a financial advisor. And I think if they think they could do that, that's a mistake. It's a mistake for you to hire them. It's a mistake for them to present themselves that way. What they do well, really well, is as a third party, as your coach, as your agent, telling you when you're stepping in it, and also telling you, you know what, to dovetail with all your goals, here are the asset classes that historically would have gotten you there. And here's the formula that historically has worked for a lot of people, applying science and knowledge to your financial plan. Maybe you want to retire one time. They probably have retired a couple hundred times with other people. That's the magic, not throwing a dart toward funds. Which brings us to the big idea today, guys. The big idea is this. There's this cool group, this networking group that focuses on teaching people to focus on their unique talent and spend all your time on what you can uniquely do and then delegate the rest. And I think that that's very, very true. And you look at the people that are in this, it's Dan Sullivan's Strategic Coach is the name of this group. And when it comes to the people that follow this, they do exceedingly well. He only takes people that make over a high threshold of money already, and he makes them even more productive and able to do more. And the reason is they cut away everything except that stuff that they're uniquely great at. And you look at these people at MIT and what they're doing with spaghetti, you have to be a unique person to even decide to study that. And if you're somebody who's working in a pasta plant, as an example, Kimberly, you're somebody working in a pasta plant and you love making pasta, maybe having a professional on your team, like our second piece from the National Association of Plant Advisors says, is a great idea. Delegate everything that's not your unique talent. Spend more time focused on your unique talent. And I think that helps you get ahead. But that's not all the big idea today. I think the second big idea is we got to go back to this other thing. You also have unique interest. I don't think anybody listening is, except maybe Kimberly now, is as attracted to the spaghetti piece as I am. I'm fascinated by it. I should have been a spaghetti engineer, I think, maybe. But take those breadcrumbs and follow your unique interest. Don't apologize for them. Follow those things. If you follow your unique talent, you follow your unique interest, these things that other people call are a waste of time might end up being the next big thing for you. And I think that's our big takeaway today. All right, guys, thanks to everybody for playing on Facebook. We had a feisty crowd there today. Thanks to everybody listening at home. By the way, thank you to everybody who's left a review for this show. We've had the reviews pouring in lately, and thank you for all the kind words. This one's going on Mob's fridge as soon as I pull this up because I forgot to do it beforehand. This piece, and I skipped it before, it says, better than coffee, maybe, by RevMW, I think. 5 stars. As a fan of Stacking Benjamins, I was excited to try out the new podcast. Love the simple format, 2 headlines with commentary and a big idea to tie them together. Just the right dose of salad, balance, financial thinking, and the perfect length to accompany my morning walk with the dog, like participating on Facebook as well when I catch it. Fantastic. Thank you very much for the reviews. That helps people know what they're getting into when they listen to Money in the Morning. All right. Go stack some Benjamins. We'll see you back here next time. Bye-bye.
Money in the Morning is created by Joe Saul-Sehy and comes to your ears because of the collective genius of our producer, Richie Rutter-Reese, engineer, Caden Thompson, and a pack of very well-trained ferrets here in the basement. You'll find links to all of our headlines featured on today's show in Joe's Twitter feed at @AverageJoeMoney. I know you already know this too, but Money in the Morning is for entertainment purposes only. You shouldn't act on anything recommended by a bunch of entertainers in a basement without first consulting with your financial advisor and second, having your head examined. Have a headline you'd like us to discuss? Send them to joe@stackingbenjamins.com or put them on our Stacking Benjamins Basement closed Facebook group. This show is copyright 2018 Stacking Benjamins LLC, all rights reserved. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and I reserve the right to always say, we'll see you next time back here on Money in the Morning.